Hey guys, and welcome to another episode on my Mark II Super Build. We're gonna do stuff a little bit different today.
What?
Instead of working on that donor chassis right there, we're gonna start working on my daily driver.
You're f***ing high!
Now the original plan was to get this chassis prepped and then kick everything off of this thing and move it over there that's usable and make one good solid car, but we're gonna do this a little out of order. The reason why is because the engine blew.
Oh my God! What's wrong with your face?
So the other day while I was driving to work, got off the interstate, there when all of a sudden my car started vibrating like crazy and the temperature shot up. You may remember a couple episodes back I mentioned there's a little bit of vibrating in the engine. Sometimes, and it's vibrating all of a sudden. That's a great sign. Like how I handle most of life's problems, I chose to ignore it. So all of a sudden a giant plume of white smoke just pops out my exhaust. And I tried to start it later to see if it's still cranked over and stuff, just to check. I heard this metal on metal sound when I was turning it over. It was the worst sound I ever heard a car made in my life. And my heart just sank. So I'm pretty sure the motor's and something's gone awry inside. So worst possible scenario, piston or pistons is gone, inside of the cylinder wall is gouged all to hell, and God knows what else. So but the only way to figure out for sure is to take this thing out and rebuild the motor. I was going to rebuild the motor eventually anyway, but I guess this just sped up the process, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So on this episode we're going to be pulling the motor and rebuilding it and checking out what went wrong and slapping it back together, and hopefully it works. Wow, I look like nasty. Anyways, so I finally got the engine pulled out of this thing. I got the flywheel bolts off. I had to go get special bits to get it done, but I got it. I don't know if you can see, but these nuts are just eating away. So I got the flywheel off, and it's not looking so good because I took this off and there's a bunch of the bolts here. I don't know what happened, something came loose or something, but there's a lot of metal shavings out here. That's all that little shimmery stuff you see, the metal shavings. It's not good. I'm a little worried. I'm kind of afraid of taking this thing apart now, but I gotta do it. Alright, so finally got the engine out. There she blows. I'm not a professional by any means. I don't know if that's been obvious to you guys, but so I didn't even have the right length bolts to fit to the block onto the engine stand, so I had to go to Lowe's and get a couple more bolts. And they only had two the right size, and I had to get two that weren't the right size, so I had to space them out. So I had to use a couple nuts on each and a couple of my wrenches. A couple that I know for sure that I won't need to use. Use what works, man. First things first, I'm going to do is take all the excess off, the power steering pump, fan, pulleys, belt, distributor, all that jazz. After that, I'm going to disassemble the head. Then first look inside to see and check if all my rods are still intact and if nothing's broken, or if it's carnage in there. I'm really hoping that's not the case, but it's not looking so good because when I remove the torque converter and flywheel, all those strip bolts that I showed you earlier. There's metal flakes in here, and that could be just from the bolts, but I still don't know what came loose that caused all this, that hit the bolts. So, like, I don't know if you can see, but I just took that out of there, and that's shards of metal. I have no idea. But anyways, so I finally got it out. I made the mistake of trying to pull the block by itself. What I learned now, you should always just pull the engine and transmission. It's just so much easier that way than dealing with all that. So alright, I wish I had more consistent time to work on this, but I don't. Pretty much disassembled the whole front part of the engine, took the timing cover off, all the accessories, moved the valve head covers, mark up the timing for when I put the belt back on, and just been cataloging all the bolts and stuff, which just takes time. So you always want to make sure you do that whenever you take an engine apart, because you don't want to end up trying to put it back together, have no idea what anything goes to, and then you're just f***ed. So, what's up, baby boy? What's up, baby boy? Eddie. But anyways, so good news so far. I spun the crank around a few times, and it sounds like the cylinders, there's no rubbing or any kind of terrible noise, so it could be very well possible that it's just a head gasket and the pistons are perfectly fine. I won't know though until I tear into this thing. I'm still concerned that I still haven't figured out where all these metal shavings in the back came from. And another concern is this pulley that I took off. You look, yeah, it's got bits of it just sheared off. I have no idea how that happened. But this thing, I don't think I'm going to reuse this. I'll either have to order a new one or use the spare one off the cylinder block. So hopefully it's not any worse than that. I won't know until I get into it more, but I'm going to call it quits. I'll pick this up tomorrow night after work, and hopefully by then I'll have everything gutted. So. Hey guys, so I've had a couple days to dig into the engine and figure out what the hell happened, and it's actually good news. So when I took the engine apart, I checked the head, took the head gasket off, and the head gasket was mangled to hell. It looked like it was disintegrated at around the 5th and 6th cylinders, which caused that white cloud to come out of my ass. Checked the cylinders, and they are actually not that bad. It was just a little bit of surface rust from the water getting through on the 5th and 6th cylinder, but it wasn't that bad. Still got a little rust there. And then I turned it over and checked, and it was, the oil and water didn't even mix that bad because it just started happening. And there's very minimal milky white. That's what happens when oil and water mixes. They turn into this milky sludge. But as you can see here, that coffee looking stuff at the bottom of my oil pan, that was just the beginnings of it. So it just happened. It wasn't like a slow thing that happened over time. So that head gasket just gave up that day. So if it wasn't the engine, so I couldn't figure out what that sound was. So with a little detective work, I went ahead and pulled the transmission, which I should have done in the first place. It would have made my life so much easier. And it turns, and check this out. See that gouging? That's not supposed to be there. And like it is gouged all the way inside here. It's all the way around. I don't know if you can see it or not. See that? That right there? It's like a ring all the way around. But it's not, it looks like it just started. So the sound actually came from inside the bell housing. I knew that's what happened when I found these. Inside the bell housing I found all this. Like, it was a nightmare of just a smorgasbord of just shrapnel. So here's the torque converter and flywheel, and what happened was, turns out, you can see right there, that's a bolt. So the head of the bolt somehow got sheared off when I tried to start it that day. When it's sheared off between the flywheel and the engine, it got torn to pieces, and all the pieces went everywhere. If you look here, there's that almost went through the flywheel. There's punctures and scratches. The flywheel was all scratched to hell all the way around, and then it split in two different groups. One went in front of the flywheel, and one went behind the torque converter. And all the way around the torque converter, the rest of it went between the torque converter and the bell housing, and has all these gouges, but it didn't puncture anything. But it's just crazy that that happened at the same time. So that's what that metal sound was. I'm really glad it wasn't something super bad. Now that I know what's wrong with the engine, I feel a lot better. So now I'm just gonna clean everything and put this engine back together. that's it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Notice here that I got the engine back in the car, but I ran into a lot of issues. To find out what those issues were, you gotta tune in next time. Peace.